Hey everybody, I want to thank everybody coming in. If you like this stuff, if you want to hear more of this channel, smash that like button. Please subscribe. Alright, what I'm going to do here, I've been a huge fan of thrash metal for years. It's like one of my favorite forms of metal. It has been next to like death metal. Um, One of my favorite thrash metal bands of all time, speed metal bands of all time, is Anthrax. I think out of the big four, besides Metallica going huge, I think Anthrax is one of those bands that, like Slayer, in a way, and even Megadeth, um, they they stayed the course of who they were, and they more or less stayed true to who they are and who they were. Um, with the lack of a lot of radio play, the lack of a lot of MTV, um, they stayed that course. You know, they were just, in my opinion, Anthrax has always been a fun band, to say the least. Um, I've always loved Belladonna on vocals, and I was one of those people that, in between that, was on the fence about Belladonna, and even more on the fence when John Bush joined the fold from Urban Saint back in the day. Um, I think Anthrax, you know, persevered through a lot, especially with all the things that happened in 2001, with the anthrax scares going on in the world, to the point where they were going to change their names. And a lot of us know I was signed that petition that was going on. I know I was one of them that signed it. That said, don't change your name. You have members from FDNY out there saying, don't change your name. NYPD, Port Authority, a lot of fans. I think even the mayor at that time, Giuliani, said the same thing. So in a way, I'm glad they never changed their name. Like a lot of bands, they had a lot of changes, infighting, people that you know that there were people coming in to play guitar at one time because of of Danny Spitz just wanting out of music. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do my top favorite albums by Anthrax. If you want to comment on it, leave your list. Your thoughts about it. Just leave them in the comment box below. Because I always like seeing this, especially with older thrash bands, with their discographies. I mean, they're 11 albums in right now, and they're supposed to be coming out with a new one. It's either going to be 2024 or 2025. There's no title as of yet. A lot of the reports coming out, Scott Ian and Charlie Benante, and I think Bello also did an interview on XM saying this album's going to be heavier, more melodic, that the drums were going to be different than people ever heard. It's a lot heavier. There's no title as of yet, so I'm interested to see what it's going to sound like. And I don't know if they're going to go back to a 4-piece or a 5-piece on this, because Jason is full-time now back in Shadows Fall, because they're working on a new album. Excuse me. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it folds out. I'm very interested in it. Like I said, they've been one of my favorite thrash bands since I first heard them back in the day. So let me get into this. And like I said, if you like this stuff, please smash that like button, subscribe. Like I said, I'm just starting this out, so all the help I can get, deeply, deeply appreciate it. And again, leave your comments in the comment box below on your favorites, any difference, from mine that you would do. My personal favorite from them um, is Among the Living. It's one of my favorite albums by them. Um, you know, Caught in a Mosh, which became like a household song for them. You know, uh, Indian Skeletons in the Closet, um, Imitation of Life, the title track Among the Living, which I think is one of their best songs, and of course the classic NFL Evil, because Evil Nissa, yeah, I can't pronounce it, so you know what I'm talking about. NFL, Evil Nicka There you go. Thank you. Came out. This one came out '87, and around that time they were also doing the I'm the Man EP. You know, that rap metal song they did, which caught on to a lot, especially back in the '80s, because you had a lot of metal and rap just starting to like do collaborations, sort of. But yeah, they had that coming out. That EP consisted of different versions of I'm the Man, a live version of it, I believe. They also had I think a Sabbath. I think they cut on that one. They covered Sabbath, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath on that one also, which I thought was a really good cover of that song for that time. And I think there was also, they did a live version of Caught in the Mosh on that one too, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think Among the Living started to propel them more musically. I think Scott and Danny really started to come out on their own on that one, as did Frankie. Joey's vocals were great on that album. Like I said, I've always been a Joey fan. Um, the drums on it were great, in my opinion. It was more like a groovy type melodic drum, you know. I guess I think that propelled them, like started to propel them more than, you know, their couple previous ones. But yeah, you know, that's one of my favorite by them. Definitely Among the Living. My next one is Persistence of Time. '91. I love this album by them. It's definitely up there with my favorites of all time. Um, that album, top to bottom, it was just a great album. Melodic, heavy, a little groove to it, you know, but they still kept up with that um, thrashy speed type, you know, that they were accustomed to, that the Anthrax fans loved. Um, Great album. I loved it. Um, they did a cover on that album, In My World, by I forgot his name right now. It's off the top of my head. I just don't remember the name. Oh my god. My bad. I'll remember if you remember before I do. Just leave it in the comments. My mind just went blank. Um, I think a lot of favorites, including mine and a lot of people's, Keeping the Family, Belly the Beast, Got the Time, Discharge. I loved. Believe it or not, it's one of my favorite songs now. Time, just to start it. Tick 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 tick. You know, I think Belladonna's voice, vocals on his album were a lot more melodic. A lot more out there. You know, Belladonna has always had that unique progressive type voice where he can hit those high notes, you know, and hit the lows. It's just this is one of them that I think, especially coming out in the '90s, you had a barrage of albums coming out in the '90s. You had Metallica coming out, Megadeth, Slayer, Testament, Motorhead dropped something, and you also had the rise of, you know, upcoming death metal. You know, you had Pantera dropping their album. Kiss even dropped an album that year, I believe. You know, So you had a lot of bands in the '90s starting to drop albums, and that's when metal. I think that's when metal just started to go further up. You know, um, especially death metal at that time. So you had a lot, and then then everybody knows grunge started to come in. So you had, but people say, "No, grunge is gonna take over." But in my opinion, metal just stayed the course. All the thrash bands stayed that course. And in my opinion, some of the greatest albums came out in '91. Anthrax being one of them. So yeah, that's that's my top two of them. Um, Next one is the classic "Spreading the Disease," one of the first albums, first songs I ever heard by them. I was like 9 or 10. Um, I think one of my first songs I ever heard by them was off their first one, Fistful of Metal. It was Soldiers of Metal that I first heard by them, and then Spreading the Disease. My brother used to play them all the time. This was like one of my brother's favorite albums. One of the first songs I heard off of Spreading the Disease was Armed and Dangerous and Medusa. I love Medusa, just the vocal stretch on that, the heaviness of it, the guitars, the little bit of the distortion in that was perfect. The drums, Aftershock again, great, like a groove type thrash feel to it, and then the classic Madhouse, which I think everybody, is like one of their go-tos from this album. And the video for it was great. The video was awesome. AIR, the first track off this album. Top to bottom, I think this like many of those albums that came out, 85, 86, to today's, stand the test of time. Plus, I love the album cover on this. I really do. He's being pushed in and gas mask on. And yeah. Another album that, like I said, Anthrax has always been a type of band that has taken chances with albums. Some good, some bad. Yeah, definitely. One of my favorites of all time also. And some great tracks. Next one I gotta go with is Worship Music. This came out in 2011. I love this album. It's in my opinion, it's one of the overlooked albums by them. Hell on Earth, The Devil You Know, Fight Till You Can't. I think Fight Till You Can't was like the first single off this record. This one, this is where the band just had different issues going on at one time. You remember, there was a guy named Dan Nelson. He was with them for like a cup of coffee. I think, if I'm not mistaken, his names are in here for the credits for like 6-7 songs. Things didn't work out with them, which, he was in, I think he was in 2 other bands, I believe. I know he had some other projects. He's from here in New York. He's like a journeyman musician, lead singer. This also started the downfall of them with John Bush. I'll get to him in a couple albums. John Bush decided to come back into the fold. That didn't work. There was infighting with them between everybody of who, how they wanted to do things, how it should be done. This was also Rob Caggiano's, I believe this is like his first album with them on guitar. Because they were, after Dan Spitz left, again, I'll get them in the next few albums, they were a 4-piece for a little bit until they started getting, the extra guitarists back in. They were primarily a piece, but they were having like tour guitarist with them that was just there on the tour with them. But Dan Nelson, he was in a band, a couple bands. If I remember correctly, Black Gates, I think it was, and oh my god, I don't remember the other band names, but he was I'm sorry. I I I I do have some notes written down that I was trying to just remember myself, but I had to write them down to remember myself. Um, Mad Tandem. Thank you. The other one. I was trying to remember it, but I just scribbled things down, especially for this album. Because this time frame for them, there was just so much going on with this band that they didn't know what they were gonna do either. That was the scary part. John Bush left because it was infighting with him. Nelson just walked away. Like I say, he was with them for like a cup of coffee. They wanted Bush to come back. Bush wanted to do things his way. And it caused a rift between him and Ian and Bello. That's when Belladonna came back to the fold. This was Belladonna's first real album back with them. He came back in, recorded this album with them, and then I think his full album with them that brought him back into the band was I think the 2016 release. I believe it was. Yeah, For All Kings, I think it was. Which I got coming up, yeah. So yeah, it's not a bad album. As I said, there was a lot of infighting going on. It was a great comeback album for them for that time. Another one song, In the End, real catchy tune. But yeah, like I said, all bands have their infighting, and Anthrax. It happens with all the bands. People want to be on top, and people coming into the band want to do what they want to do, and that's how it goes. I hate to say it, but that's how it goes a lot of the time. The next one that I put up there, I've gone back and forth with a few of these albums. For All Kings, like it was the first album with Joey back in the band. I think he did a great job coming back. It felt right. I mean, when he came back in, I quickly bought this one. I enjoyed it top to bottom. It's also had John from Shadows Fall on guitar on this one. John, he has since left to go back to Shadows Fall because they're working on a new album. I mean, him and from Overkill, the Shadows Fall's drummer, is also going back. The one who's in Overkill, he's going back to the Shadows Fall also. It's interesting to see what those guys do. Those guys haven't put out a record in quite some time. But getting back to Anthrax, not a bad one by them. Like I said, I'm glad Joey came back to the band. I think it was time for him to come back. I don't want to say in a bad way, but I think John Bush just got stale for a lot of fans. And I think I love John Bush, I love Armored Saint, but I think John Bush wanted to turn Anthrax into another Armored Saint, in my opinion. And John Bush has a great vocal. I love him in Armored Saint, and I loved him in Anthrax. I think he brought. I think John Bush brought that grittiness of his vocals, and at that time it sounded right, But yeah, I would definitely recommend this album to anybody just getting into Anthrax. In my opinion, so many good tracks in it, and there's some tracks that are like, that leaves you thinking, did they rush it? You know, Evil Twin's a great track. Uh, All Them Thieves, Blood Eagle Wings. Um, we gotta, you gotta believe. It's just a great album. You know, like I said, there's some filler tracks that do leave, you know, the listener to wonder what was going on then. But I think, like I said, I think Belladonna coming back at the time he did was needed. Um, you might remember Anthrax was going through a lot of stuff in the pen in the albums and years prior to this. Bickering, infighting, you know, which a lot of bands happen. That's goes without saying a lot of times. The next one is their debut, Fistful of Metal. Um, Neil Turbin, the original lead singer, not a bad vocalist by any stretch. I think he had more of it. To me, he sounded more like AC/DC singer a lot of the times. Um, all in all, great debut though. Like I said, um, first song that I heard from them, Soldiers of Metal, and I was hooked. You know, my brother again playing it. Death Rider, I'm 18, the cover of Alice Cooper. Metal Thrashing Mad. Now, I tell you, this one could with Danny Liker on bass, who at that time left to go to do the side project by SOD and also Nuclear Assault. So he was going back and forth. Like I said, this was the one and only release that Turbin was on. And then the next album, Splendid Disease, is when Belladonna came. But like I said, not a bad debut at all. You know, it put them on the map, you know, as a force. And the rest is history. They took off. I think Benante's drums came a long way, especially on albums leading after this, especially on Persistence of Time, and Among the Living. I think his drums started to take off then, and Charlie has always been one of my favorite drummers. You know, he could play just about anything, and I mean anything. Yeah, so you know, I think every band has that debut album that, you know, it's a good debut, but it's always their second album or third album that takes them higher. And I think for Anthrax, Splendid Disease, their second release started, or it was a third, but I'm not counting Arna Dangerous because that was Joey's first, you know, start with them, and that was more like covers and everything on there, and some redone issues or whatever. But I think Splendid Disease, it started. That's where it started for them. You know, everybody got that feeling for them there, and then once Among the Living hit, it like a lot of bands, it just took off. That's why I said Anthrax has always been that type of band that, you know, stayed the track, stayed the current. You know, they didn't write things to get huge. You know, and like out of the big four, yeah, my favorite Slayer of all time. There's no doubt about that. No saying more about it. Metallica, yeah, Metallica set things for them, but Slayer set them above. Slayer set it above Metallica, in my opinion. And Anthrax, you know, was hanging around. Then Megadeth formed. Megadeth put some, you know, great album releases too, which I'll be doing a discography of them soon, also, and Slayer, and Metallica, even though I don't have all the Metallica albums, which I'm working on getting the ones that I didn't want to get, you know. But I think the big four was needed, especially in the 90s. In the 90s, you had all four bands putting out great albums in the 90s, especially from 89 to like, I'll say 94, 95, you know. Yeah, so Anthrax just has always been one of my bands that stayed the same. They stayed that track, you know. And I was always, like I said, I was one of those people on the fence about Belladonna and John Bush, you know. But I think Belladonna back in the band is the right move. I think Bush being back in Urban Saint is the right move for him. Also, being in Category 7 now is even, you know, he's extending his background and just, you know, letting it go further out for him. So I applaud John. I do. Again, he's one of my favorite lead singers. He's doing an amazing job in Category 7. And, you know, face it, Armored Saint put out some great records with him. You know, which I'm in the future I'm gonna do a thing on Armored Saint also. But yeah, that would, Fistful of Metal being their debut was still good. It was, in my opinion, excellent, you know, debut. The next one, a lot of people are shook their head or gonna say, "Huh? What?" Sound of White Noise. I like this album a lot. Only hit, you know, when they debuted it, I liked it. Package Rebellion, Room for One More is my favorite track off this album. The breakdowns of it, the heaviness of it, the thrashiness of it, the lyrics in it were great in my point, and you know, my opinion. Invisible is another song on this album that I love. Thousand Points of Hate. Even that ballad Black Lodge, just the vocals in it. John's vocals in that song is great. You know, this album caught a lot of slack from a lot of people. You know, it was John Bush's first album. Again, I was one of those ones on the fence, and I think at this time, for Anthrax, he fit what they were doing. He added John Bush has always had that gritty voice, and that's what this album was. You know, it was a gritty, harder album for them. I still put this up, you know, in their top releases. I still put this in probably if I was to do a top 100, this would definitely be my top 100, hands down, without a doubt. But yeah, I know a lot of people didn't like that album. It got mixed reviews by a lot of people. I think I saw him on tour on that album, if I'm not mistaken. I did. Yeah, it was a good, like in the 90s, different band, you know, they were putting out albums, and that was one of the albums that really peaked, in my opinion, in the 90s. I know it got a lot of independent radio play. It got a lot of play on MTV also. If you guys remember Headbangers Ball, it got a lot of play on that on Headbangers Ball, a lot. Next one for me, an album that a lot of people did not like when this came out in '88, State of Euphoria. I think it was more of a poppy album for them. There are some good songs on this album, don't get me wrong. It was more of a, like a poppy, but thrash album indeed, to say the least. Favorite song for me is Out of Sight, Out of Mind. Who Cares Wins. Misery Loves Company is in my opinion, is an awesome track. Schism. Uh, I know a lot of people are sick and tired of hearing the song "Antisocial," which was which I think was their single off this album when his album first dropped. Uh, I think I think Anthrax at that point, in '88, they needed to refine themselves. Um, and you think about it, because they had Among the Living coming out the year prior. I think it was the year prior. Yeah, the year prior to that. So, you know, people like I think a lot of people wanted them to continue with how they sounded on Among the Living. You know, and this album, I think they tried more to expand, and it didn't work for them at the time. Like I said, it's not a super bad album by any stretch. It's a fairly good album. Um, but again, it's just one of those albums like Sound of White Noise that people really had to have it grow on them over time, and it has for me. I mean, it came out in 88, and it's now 2024. You know, I still spin it from time to time. You know, there's songs when I listen to it, there's songs I remember. Oh wow, listen to it now. Oh, wow, it's pretty good, damn good track. You know, but yeah, and people always say about Anthrax painting that corner like a lot of people said, and I quote Lars Ulrich saying it about Slayer, painting themselves into a corner. You know, and Jerry King said it best. Okay, if I painted myself in a corner, I like my little corner. I like my little world. And that's exactly what Anthrax did, and what they said to a lot of people. You know, but yeah, it's 2024. People still talking about the albums. They did something right in my opinion. So kudos to them. And like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to the new that new Anthrax record dropping. Either like I said, I'm not sure if it's gonna be 2024 or 2025. There's still been the error on it. As far as I know, no title for the album that has even been, written down yet. So that's definitely one album that is on my list of albums to get when it comes out. Definitely. And there's also talk about them doing a full blown tour with this album. So, I'm gonna be wanting to see that too. Like I said, I've seen Anthrax a bunch of times. I've seen Anthrax a number of times in the late '80s, '90s, early 2000s. I saw them. They're still rocking it. They're still gonna put on great shows. They're still one of the best bands live, hands down. I don't care what anybody says or thinks. They're still one of the best bands live. Period. Next one for me is "We Come for You All." This album hits a little bit close for me. This is the album. Remember, this came out in '03. Rob Caggiano was on this album guitar. They, like I said, they're going back and forth between a 4-piece and a 5-piece back, and having touring guitarists with them. This is when Rob Caggiano came on. This album came out in a time, again, 2003. After 9/11, the world just stopped for a little while. Then 2001, 2002, the Anthrax scare started happening, where people were getting that white powder sent to their houses, offices, wherever, left on their car doors, for that matter. Anthrax was going to change their name because with the thing with Anthrax going around, they felt like they were, supporting it by their name. And like I said, a lot of FDNY members, NYPD, I believe at the time Mayor Giuliani even said, "No, you're not changing your name." And from Anthrax being from New York, born, bred in New York, even members from the Yankees organization, Mets, Rangers, I think the Jets and Giants. Front office even said, and players even said, no, you know, you guys were around way before this crap started happening. You know, you guys were around way before this crap started happening in this world right now. There was a huge petition online. I remember I was one of the ones that signed it. You had to do your AOL, whatever it was, MySpace. They had the little thing going around. You clicked on it, you signed your name, you dated it or whatever, and you know you can leave a little comment below. I know a lot of people that signed this. I think there were like 500,000 signatures, if I'm not mistaken. I might be off by a little bit, but a lot of people signed it. A lot of bands signed it. A lot of big names signed it too. Some politicians even signed it. You know, I'm glad they didn't change their name to something totally different, because I would have still been calling them Anthrax. You know, and a lot of people said the metal world needs Anthrax. It needs them playing. It needs them to continue doing their thing, waving that flag. You know, supporting New York through that time, and not only New York, but tri-state area. You know, the entire country, for that matter, and the world for that matter. You know, they did the show at it was Hammerstein Ballroom, if I'm not mistaken. The tour, the show for 9/11 for the FDNY members, NYPD, Port Authority. It was them, Overkill, I believe, Prong, and a few others. It was a great show. Hands down. Anthrax played their asses off that night. Overkill played their asses off that night. Prong did too, which is a great show. This album incidentally also has a few tracks from Dime on it. As you know, Dimebag and Charlie and Scotty were really good friends. Very good friends. Anthrax toured a lot with Pantera. I think I saw them twice with Pantera, actually, in late 90s. Hell, even in mid-90s for that matter. But yeah, this is definitely one of those albums by them that I really do appreciate and like. I think their style on this was very good. It still had that hard stuff, some melodic, little groove parts to it, you know, because back then I think a lot of bands were changing their styles, but you know, a lot of bands were keeping that course. You know, for Anthrax to be doing what they're doing now, somewhat, 40 years into it now, I think it is, roughly, give or take a couple years. I salute them. They've been one of my favorite, and they always will be. Last album is Volume 8, The Threat Is Real. Came out in 98. This was one of the albums that a lot of fans were saying, what's going to happen to these guys? This album didn't fare that well with a lot of people, or in the top 200 for that matter, or even the Billboard. There were some great songs on here. They did an awesome cover of DRI on here. Snap, I'd Rather Be Sleeping. Great cover. Crush, Catharus, Inside Out are just a couple of them. Killing Box. God, that song just came to me. Again, there were a 4-piece on this, but there were a few guitarists that they took on tour with them. But for the most part, there were a 4-piece on this album when this one dropped until, if I've got to remember it right now, I think it was 08 actually, where they got that, that fifth drum, or the fifth guitarist, I'm sorry, that fifth member, the guitarist on it. But yeah, thank you for everybody tuning in. Please feel free, leave your comments in the comment box. I would love to hear what your top Anthrax ones. Um, what you thought about my list. Any memories that you have of these albums, because there's so many memories of these albums and Anthrax in general that just keep flooding back to me. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching, for tuning in, for subscribing, for liking. Again, if you like this type of stuff, please smash that like button for me, subscribe. I deeply appreciate you guys. Just smash it so other people can see it, like it. If you want to pass my channel on to others, I am on Instagram, Mr. Metalhead Warrior NY. I'm on Facebook, Walter Bloom, so I'm not even gonna worry about that too much. Again, I'm on Instagram. That's about it for today. I plan on doing in the future, like I said, probably a Slayer, definitely. A Megan if I want to do, again, a few others. I also do go live from time to time. So yeah, again, smash that like button, subscribe to me, please. I'm just starting off doing this, so I'm getting the hang of everything day by day, step by step, my own little way. Again, leave your comments in the comment box down below. Tell me how close I was with the albums, and your order compared to mine, and your favorites, and other favorites, and this and that. And also, if anybody has any feedback about their album coming out in 2024 or 25, please let me know. Like I said, right here, there's no title of this album yet. I'm dying to hear his title. I'm dying for them to drop a couple of singles already. I wish Ian and Bello and them would just say, here's a couple of tracks with no vocals, and what do you think of the songs that are going to be songs, but they're instrumentals? Please, just do that. Scott, please. Anyways, people, thank you for tuning in. Stay hard, stay heavy, stay brutal. Keep waving that metal flag back and forth, everybody. And like I always say to people, take care of one another. If you're going to do something, make it count. Metalhead Warrior, the Bulldog says I'm out.